Yes, I support the death penalty. It is an issue that cannot be fudged or hedged. States without the death penalty have had consistently lower murder rates, and national murder rates have declined steadily since 1992, despite fewer executions. There is no place for the death penalty in a just, humane society. The campaign against the death penalty has been, while a powerful campaign, its participants have been those who attend all of the vigils, a relatively small number of people. As one whose husband and mother-in-law have died the victims of murder and assassination, I stand firmly and unequivocally opposed to the death penalty for those convicted of capital offenses. An evil deed is not redeemed by an evil deed of retaliation. It is easy not to support the death penalty when there is doubt about the culpability of the person sitting in the chair. It is harder to sustain such principles when the crime of the accused is morally indefensible. While I am a pro-life woman, I am also a woman who is concerned about rights for the disabled, maternity leave, the death penalty, health care, domestic violence, breastfeeding rights, etc. Whatever you think of Assad, he was a complex figure and we should not look for easy answers with him. He was, strangely perhaps, against the death penalty, and he was never put in prison for murders or anything like that. You can't reconcile being pro-life on abortion and pro-death on the death penalty. But I'm not pro-death penalty. I'm just anti the notion that it is not a matter for democratic choice, that it has been taken away from the democratic choice of the people by a provision of the Constitution. Had it not been for slavery, the death penalty would have likely been abolished in America. Slavery became a haven for the death penalty. Sometimes I have to compromise my views, but I never compromise on issues like the death penalty and the armed trade laws, despite what the readers or letters may say. My father was against the death penalty, and that was hard in the son of Sam Summer when fear was driving the desire for the death penalty. I'm actually really opposed to the death penalty. I had concluded when I was the prosecutor that I would vote against the death penalty if I were in the legislature, but that I could ask for it when I was satisfied as to guilt. The death penalty, I think, is a terrible scar on American justice, especially the concept of equal justice under law, but also of due process. And it goes state by state, and it's different in different states. The death penalty is being applied in the United States as a fatal lottery. Because the Illinois death penalty system is arbitrary and capricious, and therefore immoral, I no longer shall tinker with the machinery of death. I'm totally against the death penalty, which, if anyone has a right to support, I do, because I do not see it as a deterrent to crime. I am against the death penalty. I don't believe in the death penalty, but I understand personal vengeance. There is no doubt that the most heinous crimes warrant the death penalty. The death penalty has been one of many examples where racial discrimination has played out. You can see it in the simple fact that someone convicted of the same crime is more likely to face the death penalty if they are black. Our criminal justice system is fallible. We know it, even though we don't like to admit it. It is fallible despite the best efforts of most within it to do justice. And this fallibility is, at the end of the day, the most compelling, persuasive, and winning argument against a death penalty. Death row inmates are almost twice as expensive to house each year as other inmates. Death penalty trials are much costlier than trials where execution is not a potential punishment and consume more time from judges, public defenders, and other legal personnel. If you think aficionados of a living constitution want to bring you flexibility, think again. You think the death penalty is a good idea? Persuade your fellow citizens to adopt it. You want a right to abortion? Persuade your fellow citizens and enact it. That's flexibility. The possibility of sending an innocent person to their death is a reason why I'm against the death penalty. I believe that people would be alive today if there were a death penalty. If, through death penalty, we can create fears, though it's against my will, we have to do it. Crucial to understanding federalism in modern-day America is the concept of mobility, or the ability to vote with your feet. If you don't support the death penalty and citizens packing a pistol, don't come to Texas. If you don't like medicinal marijuana and gay marriage, don't move to California. Our law is a Jordanian law that we inherited, which applies to both the West Bank and Gaza, and sets the death penalty for those who sell land to Israelis. The death penalty is discriminatory and does not do anything about crime. I was personally opposed to the death penalty, and yet I think I have probably asked for the death penalty more than most people in the United States. When I arrived in France aged 20, I marched against the death penalty, which was an unpopular thing to protest against at the time. McVeigh's lawyer got him the death penalty, which, quite frankly, I could have done. I support the death penalty, but I also think there has to be no margin for error. For centuries the death penalty, often accompanied by barbarous refinements, has been trying to hold crime in check, yet crime persists. Why? Because the instincts that are warring in men are not, as the law claims, constant forces in a state of equilibrium. Not all moral issues have the same moral weight as abortion and euthanasia. There may be legitimate diversity of opinion even among Catholics about waging war and applying the death penalty, but not with regard to abortion and euthanasia. Personally, I am very much against the death penalty for several reasons. The death penalty is becoming a way of life in this country. If we are to abolish the death penalty, I should like to see the first step taken by my friends the murderers. No true believer could be intolerant or a persecutor. If I were a magistrate and the law carried the death penalty against atheists, would begin by sending to the stake whoever denounced another. I will admit, like Socrates and Aristotle and Plato and some other philosophers, that there are instances where the death penalty would seem appropriate. I am not a proponent of the death penalty, but I will enforce the law as this Congress gives it to us. I believe that the death penalty is an effective penalty. While I oppose the death penalty as a policy matter, in a legal culture in which we reserve the right to execute people for relatively routine street crimes, it seems quite absurd for the justice system to get squeamish about executing the operational masterminds of September 11th. My nation wants the death penalty. That is the decision of the Grand National Assembly of Turkey. Because values change, legislatures abolish the death penalty, permit same-sex marriage if they want, abolish laws against homosexual conduct. That's how the change in a society occurs. Society doesn't change through a constitution. The death penalty confronts us with a penetrating moral question: can even the monstrous crimes of those who are condemned to death and are truly guilty of such crimes erase their sacred dignity as human beings, and their intrinsic right to life? It's absolutely clear that whatever cruel and unusual punishments may mean with regard to future things, such as death by injection or the electric chair, it's clear that the death penalty, in and of itself, is not considered cruel and unusual punishment. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.